You're just taking up space here. Mom's words echoed through our cramped apartment as she gestured at my makeshift office corner. 26 years old and still living at home, playing with your computer games. I glanced at my triple monitor setup, where complex real estate analytics and property development algorithms ran 24/7. Not exactly games, but trying to explain blockchain-based property investment to my mother was like teaching quantum physics to a goldfish. I'm working, Mom, I said quietly, watching as another property acquisition alert flashed across my screen. And I pay rent. Rent. She laughed bitterly. That pittance you call rent barely covers your portion of utilities. Meanwhile, your sister Jennifer is a real estate agent, showing actual properties to actual people. Jennifer. The golden child who sold overpriced condos to desperate millennials while I quietly built the largest digital real estate investment platform in the country. Not that my family knew about Phoenix Property Solutions or its billion-dollar portfolio. Speaking of rent, Dad chimed in from his recliner, eyes glued to the TV. It's going up again. That corporate firm downtown keeps buying up everything. Third increase this year. I suppressed a smile. Phoenix Property Solutions, my company, had indeed been acquiring properties throughout the city, including, as of this morning, the very building we lived in. Maybe if Sophie got a real job instead of playing entrepreneur, Mom continued, we could afford a better place. Jennifer's offered to help us find something. I have a job, I muttered, minimizing the screen showing my company's latest acquisition, a $500 million office complex downtown. Typing on computers isn't a job. Mom threw her hands up. Jennifer closed 3 houses last month. What have you done? Closed a $2.3 billion deal in commercial real estate, actually, but they didn't need to know that yet. My phone buzzed. Marcus, my CEO calling. Boss, the Henderson Complex papers are ready. You now own 60% of the city's residential units, including this building. Thanks, Marcus. Schedule the tenant notifications for tomorrow. All of them. He knew which building I lived in. Knew why this mattered. Every single one. Mom was still ranting about Jennifer's success when my laptop pinged. The official transfer of ownership was complete. In less than 12 hours, they'd learned that their waste of space daughter owned their home. I'm going out, I announced, closing my laptop. Work meeting. Work. Mom scoffed. You mean another coffee shop with your computer? I looked down at my deliberately modest clothes, hiding the Chanel underneath. Something like that. The coffee shop was actually my penthouse office downtown, overlooking the city I was slowly acquiring. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of my growing real estate empire, including the apartment complex where my parents still treated me like a failed entrepreneur. Ms. Mitchell. Marcus entered with a stack of papers. The tenant notifications are ready for your signature, including the one for apartment 4B, my parents' apartment. And the rent increases? As discussed. 40% across the board, except for elderly and low-income residents. He hesitated. Are you sure about this? I picked up the notification letter addressed to Robert and Patricia Mitchell. They wanted me to get a real job, to make something of myself, to stop taking up space. I signed with my executive pen, the one that cost more than their monthly rent. Well, now I own their space. Your sister Jennifer has been calling, Marcus added. Apparently, she's trying to get exclusive listing rights for Phoenix properties. She doesn't realize that she's trying to work for her little sister? I laughed. Let her submit a proposal like everyone else, though her success rate might not meet our standards. I spent the evening reviewing my empire's latest acquisitions. While Mom and Dad watched TV, probably still complaining about their unemployed daughter, I was orchestrating property deals worth billions. The next morning, right on schedule, the building manager knocked on every door, delivering the news about the ownership change and rent increases. I waited in the lobby, dressed in my real clothes now, designer suit, Louboutin heels, power blazer. The security cameras gave me a perfect view of every reaction. 4B. My parents' apartment. Knock. Knock. Mom opened the door, still in her robe. Yes. Mrs. Mitchell? I have some news about the building. It's been acquired by Phoenix Property Solutions. Here's your new lease terms and an eviction notice. Eviction. Her voice carried through the security feed. But we've lived here for 20 years. The new owner is restructuring the building. Your unit is scheduled for premium renovation. However, he checked his tablet. Ms. Sophie Mitchell, the CEO, has offered to review special cases personally. Sophie Mitchell? Mom's face went pale. What do you mean, CEO? That was my cue. The click of my heels echoed through the lobby as I approached their apartment. Mom stood frozen in the doorway, her hand clutching the eviction notice like a lifeline. Behind her, Dad had emerged from his recliner, his morning coffee forgotten. Good morning, Mom, I said pleasantly, adjusting my Cartier watch, the one she called a cheap knockoff last week, not realizing it cost more than their annual rent. Having a nice morning? Sophie. She stared at my transformation. Gone were the modest clothes and quiet demeanor, replaced by the CEO who'd been secretly buying up half the city. What is this? This. I plucked the eviction notice from her trembling hands. This is business. Real business. Not the kind Jennifer does, showing overpriced starter homes to desperate couples, but actual large-scale property development and investment. But, you're always just on your computer. Dad stammered from behind her. Yes, managing my multi-billion-dollar real estate empire. Those computer games you love to mock? Property acquisition algorithms. Investment analytics. Digital real estate platforms that process more money in a day than Jennifer makes in a year. The building manager James, who'd worked for me for 3 years without my parents ever knowing, stood professionally to the side, tablet ready. Should I continue with the notifications, Ms. Mitchell? He asked. Please do. And make sure everyone knows about the community meeting tonight. I'll be announcing the building's renovation plans. I smiled at my parents. All residents are welcome. Even those being evicted. Evicted? Mom's voice cracked. Your own parents? Taking up space apparently, I quoted her words back. Isn't that what you said last night? That I was just taking up space. Dad finally found his voice. But where will we go? Everything in the city is owned by. His face dropped as realization hit. By you. Phoenix Property Solutions owns 60% of residential properties in the metropolitan area, I confirmed, enjoying their growing comprehension. Those rent increases you've been complaining about? My company's policy. The corporate firm downtown? That's me. The luxury renovations happening across the city? All mine. Mom sank against the doorframe. All this time, you were living in my building complaining about your unemployed daughter, while I was becoming your landlord. I checked my phone as it buzzed. Another acquisition alert. Oh, look at that. We just closed on the Henderson block. Jennifer's been trying to get listings there for months. As if summoned by her name, my sister's voice carried down the hallway. Mom? Dad? What's going on? The whole building's talking about eviction notices. Jennifer rounded the corner, her realtor badge prominently displayed, and stopped short at the scene. Her eyes darted between my executive attire, our shell-shocked parents, and James's tablet displaying Phoenix Property Solutions logo. Sophie. She blinked rapidly. Why are you dressed like the CEO I am? I finished for her. The same CEO whose company you've been desperately trying to get listing rights from? How's that proposal coming, by the way? I believe our standards require at least an 85% success rate on luxury properties. You're at what, 40%? Her face flushed. That's not. You own Phoenix. Phoenix Property Solutions, Phoenix Development Group, Phoenix Digital Real Estate Platform. I listed off my companies. Oh, and as of this morning, the Henderson block you've been calling about. Though I doubt you'll be getting those listings now. But you're my little sister, she protested. You can't. Can't what? Own the building our parents live in? Control the properties you're trying to sell? Be more successful than the golden child. I turned to James. Please show my sister out. And make sure she understands that Phoenix properties are no longer available to her agency. As security escorted a protesting Jennifer away, I faced my parents again. The eviction notice gives you 30 days. I'd start packing. Wait. Mom reached for my arm. We can talk about this. We're family. Family. I raised an eyebrow. Like when you called my work worthless. When you compared me to Jennifer every day. When you said I was wasting my life on computers. Dad stepped forward. Sophie, please. We didn't know. That's the problem, isn't it? You never bothered to know. Too busy praising Jennifer's mediocre real estate career to notice I was building an empire. I checked my watch again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting about acquiring the rest of downtown. As I turned to leave, Mom called out desperately, "Where are we supposed to go?" I paused, then reached into my briefcase. "Here's a list of available properties in your price range. Don't worry, I don't own these ones. Yet." The elevator doors opened silently. I'd had them recently upgraded. Another improvement they'd attributed to the mysterious corporate owners. "Oh, and Mom." I called back. "Thanks for telling me to get a real job. Running a billion-dollar company is much more satisfying than taking up space here." The community meeting that evening was set in the building's newly renovated conference room, another upgrade my parents had never questioned. I sat at the head of the glass table, watching through the security feeds as residents filed in, clutching their notices and whispering among themselves. My parents entered last, looking smaller somehow. Mom had changed into her best dress, probably the same one she wore to Jennifer's real estate award ceremony last year, where she'd loudly lamented my absence. She didn't know I'd been there, in the VIP section, finalizing the purchase of the very building the ceremony was held in. "Good evening," I began, standing in my power suit that cost more than 3 months of their rent. "I'm Sophie Mitchell, CEO of Phoenix Property Solutions. Some of you may know me as Robert and Patricia Mitchell's unemployed daughter from 4B. The ripple of recognition through the crowd was almost physical. Neighbors who'd nodded sympathetically during Mom's rants about my wasted potential now stared wide-eyed between me and my parents. "Over the next 6 months, this building will undergo a complete luxury renovation," I continued, clicking through professional renderings on the presentation screen. "Current market value of units will triple. Unfortunately, this means most current leases will be terminated. But we can't afford triple rent," someone called out. "I'm aware," I replied coolly. "Which is why we've prepared relocation packages. Elderly residents will be offered subsidized units in our senior living complex. Low-income families will have priority access to our affordable housing properties." I paused, looking directly at my parents. "Others will need to find new accommodations." Marcus appeared at my side with another stack of documents. "The Henderson property papers are ready for your signature, Ms. Mitchell. And your sister Jennifer is in the lobby again. Tell her my assistant's assistant will be happy to explain why her listings have been revoked," I said loudly enough for my parents to hear. Now about the renovation timeline. For the next hour, I detailed plans that would transform their home into luxury apartments. Each announcement felt like a personal victory: the rooftop garden Mom had always dreamed of but would never enjoy, the premium appliances Dad had said were a waste of money, the smart home technology they dismissed as unnecessary gadgets. "Ms. Mitchell," our elderly neighbor Mrs. Chin raised her hand. "I've lived here for 30 years. And you'll be personally escorted to your new unit in Phoenix Seniors Haven," I assured her. "Complete with medical facilities and a view of the park. My parents used to say I never cared about community," I added, watching Mom flinch. They were wrong about that too. The meeting continued with a mix of protests, pleading, and practical questions. Through it all, my parents sat silently, watching their daughter command the room with the authority they'd never believed she possessed. "One final announcement," I said as the meeting drew to a close. "Phoenix Property Solutions is launching a new digital real estate platform next month. We're revolutionizing how properties are bought, sold, and managed. Those worthless computer games are now worth $4.3 billion. Dad's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. "For those interested, there's a waiting list for our new developments. Though I should mention," I smiled directly at my parents, "the application process is quite selective. We don't want anyone just taking up space." As the residents filed out, my parents remained seated, looking lost in the pristine conference room that symbolized everything they'd failed to see coming. "Sophie," Mom started, her voice small. "We didn't know." Obviously, I cut her off, organizing papers I didn't need to organize. "You were too busy bragging about Jennifer's commission checks to notice I was buying the city out from under her. But why didn't you tell us?" Dad asked. "Tell you?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like when I tried to explain blockchain real estate trading and you said I was playing pretend business. Or when I bought my first building and Mom said I was wasting time with computer nonsense, instead of getting my real estate license like Jennifer. Marcus appeared again. Ms. Mitchell, the Tokyo investors are on the line about the international expansion. Perfect timing, I said standing. Mom, Dad, you can see yourselves out. You know the way for the next 30 days at least. Wait, Mom called desperately. What about Jennifer? Her business depends on Phoenix properties. Jennifer's business depends on her ability to meet our standards, I corrected. Which she doesn't. Maybe she should have spent less time mocking my computer games and more time improving her success rate. But she's your sister. And I'm your daughter, I replied sharply. The one you said was wasting her life. The one you told to stop taking up space. Well, now I own your space. Funny how life works out, isn't it? I gathered my things, watching their reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. They looked old suddenly, their assumptions about success and their daughters crumbling around them. The eviction notice isn't just about business, I admitted quietly. It's about space. My space. The space you never thought I deserved. The space I created for myself while you were busy doubting me. We're sorry, Dad whispered.
I never planned to build my empire from my parents' basement. Life has a strange way of turning mockery into motivation. And in my case, every dismissive comment from my family only fueled my determination to succeed, even if they couldn't see it. My name is Sophia Chen, and at 28, I'm the secret CEO of Digiflow Solutions, a company valued at over $300 million. But to my family, I'm just their unemployed daughter who spends too much time on her laptop in the basement. The basement wasn't always my workspace. 5 years ago, I had a prestigious job at Goldman Sachs, complete with the corner office and six-figure salary that made my parents proud. Every family dinner, they'd introduced me as our daughter, the investment banker. My father would beam with pride, telling anyone who'd listen about my MBA from Harvard and my bright future in finance. Then I saw something that changed everything. Working on merger deals at Goldman, I noticed a massive gap in the market for streamlined digital transformation solutions. Major companies were struggling with their digital transition, losing millions due to inefficient processes. I knew I could build something better, a comprehensive platform that would revolutionize how businesses operate. The day I quit Goldman Sachs, my father's face turned ashen. "You're throwing away everything we invested in you," he said, his voice trembling with anger. My mother burst into tears, lamenting how she faced her friends at the country club. "I have a plan," I tried to explain. "I'm starting my own company." "A company?" My father scoffed. "You mean one of those internet things that never make money? No daughter of mine is going to become a basement entrepreneur." But that's exactly what I became. With my savings dwindling, I moved back home. The basement became my headquarters, not out of choice, but necessity. Every dollar I had went into developing my platform. I hired developers from around the world, working across time zones, building something revolutionary while my family thought I was just playing on my computer. The comments started slowly at first. "Sophia, honey, maybe it's time to look for a real job," my mother would say, bringing me dinner on a tray. "Mrs. Anderson's daughter is hiring at her law firm, even just as an assistant." My father was less subtle. "You're wasting your life," he'd shout during family dinners. "Look at your cousin Michael. He just made junior partner. And here you are, living in our basement like a teenager." What they didn't know was that while they were comparing me to my cousins, I was on video calls with Silicon Valley investors. While they thought I was browsing social media, I was coordinating with a team of 30 developers across 3 continents. The hardest part wasn't the work, it was maintaining my cover. I had to take investor calls in whispers after midnight. When a major tech blog featured Digiflow Solutions as the next big thing in digital transformation, I couldn't share my excitement. When we landed our first $1 million client, I had to pretend I was just having a good day because I found a new Netflix series. Then came the turning point. My father's company, Morton Manufacturing, was struggling. They failed to adapt to the digital age, losing contracts to more technologically advanced competitors. I overheard him on the phone one night, voice heavy with worry, discussing the possibility of selling the business. That same week, during our monthly family dinner, My Uncle Peter decided to give me another one of his motivational speeches. "You know, Sophia," he said, swirling his expensive wine, "when I was your age, I was already running my own division. Now look at you, almost 30, still figuring out what to do with your life." My mother jumped in, trying to help in her own misguided way. "She's just going through a phase. Maybe if she met a nice young man." I saw a position for a data entry clerk. My Aunt Margaret added kindly. "Entry level, but it could be a fresh start." I sat there, fork suspended over my untouched pasta, as my family discussed my apparent failure. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket, probably another update about our expansion into the European market. "The problem," my father announced to the table, "is that she spends all day on that laptop. What can anyone possibly accomplish staring at a screen in a basement?" Little did they know, in just 3 days, they would find out exactly what I had accomplished. Digiflow Solutions, through one of our subsidiary companies, was about to make an offer to buy Morton Manufacturing. Not to save it, though that would be a nice bonus, but because their patents and manufacturing capabilities were exactly what we needed for our expansion into IoT devices. The irony of it all almost made me laugh right there at the dinner table. Almost. My father mistook my slight smile for defiance. "You think this is funny? Your mother and I are worried sick about you. When are you going to grow up and face reality?" I carefully set down my fork. "Actually, Dad, I've been meaning to tell you, I have a meeting on Thursday. A job interview of sorts." "Really?" My mother's face lit up with hope. "Where?" "Morton Manufacturing." My father's face darkened. "Don't waste your time. We're in talks with a big tech company about buying us out. Besides, we need experienced people, not..." He gestured vaguely at my casual attire. "Basement dwellers." I just nodded, excusing myself from the table. Back in my basement office, I pulled up the latest acquisition documents on my laptop. The big tech company was actually Horizon Dynamics, one of Digiflow's shell corporations. Tomorrow I would review the final terms of the purchase agreement. In 3 days, I would walk into Morton Manufacturing not as the disappointing daughter who quit her real job, but as the CEO of their new parent company. As I sat in my basement that night, surrounded by empty coffee cups and multiple monitors displaying real-time data from our global operations, I couldn't help but wonder how they would react. Would they finally understand that success doesn't always wear a suit and sit in a corner office? That sometimes it wears jeans and builds empires from a basement? My phone buzzed again. Our Asia-Pacific division needed approval for a new partnership agreement. As I reviewed the terms, I heard my father upstairs, probably still discussing my wasted potential with dinner guests. 3 more days, I thought to myself. Just 3 more days until they learn who's really been wasting their life in this basement. Thursday morning arrived with a weight of anticipation that made the air feel heavy. I stood in front of my mirror, finally trading my usual casual attire for the power suit I reserved for board meetings. The transformation was striking. Gone was the basement dweller my family pitied, replaced by the CEO of a $300 million tech company. "Sophia," my mother's voice called down the basement stairs. "Weren't you supposed to have that job interview today?" I checked my watch, 8:45 a.m. The meeting at Morton Manufacturing was scheduled for 9:30. "Yes, Mom, I'm leaving soon." "Well, don't get your hopes up too high," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of cautious concern. "Your father says the company's being sold. They probably won't be hiring." If only she knew. I grabbed my briefcase, the one I'd hidden in the back of my closet for the past 5 years, and headed upstairs. My mother was in the kitchen, and her eyes widened when she saw me. "Oh, you look nice." She sounded genuinely surprised, as if she'd forgotten I once wore suits daily. "But isn't it a bit much for an entry-level interview?" "It's not an entry-level position, Mom." She frowned. "But you haven't worked in years." I kissed her cheek and headed for the door. "Wish me luck." "Just don't be too disappointed if it doesn't work out," she called after me. I drove my modest Honda Civic to Morton Manufacturing's headquarters, the same building where I'd attended countless family Christmas parties and summer barbecues. The security guard, who'd known me since I was a child, smiled sympathetically as he issued me a visitor's badge. "Good luck with the interview, Miss Sophia," he said kindly. "Though I heard they're selling the company. Shame, really. Your father built this place from nothing." I thanked him and headed to the executive floor. My heart pounded, not from nervousness about the meeting, but from the knowledge that everything was about to change. The conference room was already full when I arrived. My father sat at the head of the table, looking tired and defeated. Uncle Peter, a board member, sat to his right. Various executives and lawyers filled the other seats. They all looked up when I entered, their expressions ranging from confusion to pity. My father's face darkened. "Sophia, what are you doing here? The HR department is on the second floor." "Actually," I said, setting my briefcase on the table, "I'm right where I need to be." Before he could respond, his assistant hurried in. "Sir, the representatives from Horizon Dynamics have arrived." My father stood, straightening his tie. "Send them in." The door opened again, and in walked Marcus Chen, my CFO, followed by our legal team. I poached Marcus from Google 2 years ago. He was brilliant at acquisitions and knew exactly how to play his role today. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus said smoothly. "I'm Marcus Chen, CFO of Horizon Dynamics. We're here to finalize the acquisition of Morton Manufacturing." My father nodded grimly. "Yes, well, let's get this over with." "Of course," Marcus continued, "but first, our CEO would like to discuss some details personally." He turned to me and smiled. "Miss Morton, would you like to begin?" The room went absolutely silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking as every head turned toward me. My father's face had gone pale. What is this?" he stammered. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Horizon Dynamics is a subsidiary of Digiflow Solutions," I explained, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "We're interested in acquiring Morton Manufacturing for its patents and manufacturing capabilities. They'll be essential for our expansion into IoT devices." Uncle Peter leaned forward, his face red. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly." I slid the folder across the table. "Our offer is fair, $120 million, well above market value. We'll retain all current employees and modernize the facilities. The digital transformation alone will increase efficiency by at least 40%. My father was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. Digiflow Solutions, that's the tech company everyone's been talking about. The one revolutionizing digital transformation. "Yes," I said simply. "I founded it 5 years ago, from the basement." The next hour was a blur of documents, signatures, and shocked silence. My father barely spoke, mechanically signing where indicated. Uncle Peter kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. The lawyers exchanged confused glances, probably wondering how they'd missed this connection in their due diligence. When the meeting ended, people filed out quietly, leaving me alone with my father. He sat there, staring at the signed contracts. "All this time," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "while we thought you were wasting your life. I was building something," I finished for him. "Something big. Why did you tell us?" I laughed softly. "Would you have believed me? You were so convinced I was a failure, Dad, you couldn't see past your own expectations." He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "The basement. All those hours on your laptop. I was running a global company. Those late-night calls, investor meetings, all those hours wasting time online. I was coordinating with development teams across 3 continents. But why keep it secret? Why let us think?" "At first, it was because I wasn't sure I would succeed," I admitted. "Then, when Digiflow started taking off, I realized something. You and Mom, this family, you were so focused on traditional success. Corner offices, prestigious titles, things you could brag about at the country club. I needed to prove to myself more than anyone that I could succeed on my own terms." My father stood up slowly, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen him. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, Dad. But there is something you should know. I'm not buying Morton Manufacturing to prove a point. Your company has value, real value. With Digiflow's resources and technology, we can make it even stronger." He nodded, then did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry we didn't believe in you." That evening, I drove home to find my mother in a state of confused excitement. The news had spread quickly. "Why didn't you tell us?" she kept asking, following me around the kitchen. "All this time we worried." "I know, Mom," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "That's exactly why I didn't tell you." "But the basement, you're really a CEO of a huge company?" I pulled out my phone and showed her Digiflow's website, our global offices, the articles about our innovations. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the pages. "Oh my God," she whispered. My daughter built all this." From the basement, I reminded her with a smile. The following weeks were interesting, to say the least. My parents struggled to reconcile their image of their unemployed daughter with the reality of who I was. The family dynamics shifted dramatically. Aunt Margaret stopped sending me job listings. Uncle Peter suddenly wanted to discuss business opportunities. Cousins who had mocked my basement dwelling now wanted internships at Digiflow. I kept my modest Honda and stayed in the basement for another month, just to prove a point. But eventually, I moved into my own place. A penthouse apartment I bought 2 years ago but had never used. My parents visited for the first time, and my mother cried when she saw the view. "You could have had this all along," she said. "You didn't have to stay in the basement." "Actually, I did," I replied. The basement kept me humble. It reminded me that success isn't about appearances or other people's approval. It's about believing in yourself even when no one else does. My father, who had agreed to stay on as a consultant at Morton Manufacturing, was slowly adapting to the new reality. He'd stopped introducing me as his daughter who finally found her way and instead proudly told anyone who would listen about the company I'd built. 1 year after the acquisition, Morton Manufacturing's profits had doubled. The digital transformation was a success, and the IOB devices we developed using their manufacturing capabilities were revolutionizing the market. My father's employees, many of whom had known me since childhood, finally understood why the CEO spent so much time working from the basement of her parents' house. At the company's anniversary party, I stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of both Morton and Digiflow employees. My family sat in the front row, my father beaming with a pride that was different from before. Not pride in the daughter who followed the expected path, but pride in the woman who dared to forge her own. 5 years ago, I began my speech. I had an idea and a basement. Everyone thought I was crazy to leave a prestigious job to become a basement entrepreneur. But sometimes the greatest achievements start in the most humble places. Success doesn't always wear a suit and sit in a corner office. Sometimes it wears jeans, drinks too much coffee, and builds an empire from a basement. The room erupted in laughter and applause. I caught my father's eye, and he nodded, finally understanding that his daughter hadn't been wasting her life after all. These days, I have a proper office, a corner suite on the top floor of Digiflow's headquarters. But I kept the basement exactly as it was, with its empty coffee cups and multiple monitors. Sometimes, when I need to remind myself where it all began, I go back there to work. After all, that basement wasn't just a workspace, it was where I learned the most valuable lesson of all. True success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't showing off your achievements, but quietly building something so magnificent that when people finally realize what you've done, it's already too late to matter.
I stared at the email from the board of directors one last time before closing my laptop. The merger was complete. As of 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, I would officially become CEO of Anderson & Brooks, the company my family had controlled for 3 generations. Not that they knew that yet. My cousin Michael's text flashed on my phone. "Family dinner tonight. Dad's making a big announcement about the company. Try to dress professionally for once, Hannah." I smiled, thinking about the Brooks family's big announcement. Uncle David, the current CEO, planned to name Michael as his successor. He had no idea that the board had already chosen someone else, the mysterious H. Bennett who'd orchestrated the merger. My mother's maiden name had served me well. The Harrison family dinners were always a production, held in my uncle's mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. As my Uber pulled up to the circular driveway, I could see the usual parade of luxury cars, my cousin's new Porsche, my aunt's Mercedes, my father's BMW. Status symbols for a family obsessed with appearances. I smoothed down my simple black dress, Chanel's latest design, though without the obvious logos my cousins preferred. The security guard recognized me, though his smile held a touch of pity. Everyone knew I was the family disappointment, the cousin who'd settled for consulting work instead of joining the family business. "Hannah." My Aunt Margaret's voice carried across the marble foyer. "We weren't sure you'd make it. Still doing that freelance work?" I accepted her air kiss, smelling her expensive perfume. "Consulting, Aunt Margaret. And yes, business is good." "Of course, dear. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Though not quite as good as Anderson and Brooks, I'm sure. Have you heard about Michael's news? I might have heard something, I said neutrally, thinking of the board meeting where I'd outmaneuvered my cousin's bid for control. The main living room was exactly as I remembered: crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, oil paintings of stern-faced Harrison patriarchs. My cousin Michael held court near the fireplace, surrounded by his usual admirers. "Hannah," he called out, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone. "Dad said you were coming. Still working on those little consulting projects." I accepted the glass of champagne a server offered. "Something like that. You know," he leaned in, cologne heavy in the air, "after tomorrow's announcement I might be able to find you a real position at the company. Entry-level of course, but better than freelancing." If he only knew that I'd spent the last 3 years quietly buying up shares through shell companies, positioning myself for this exact moment. "That's thoughtful of you, Michael," I said, hiding my smile behind my glass. My father appeared at my elbow, his disappointment as palpable as ever. "Hannah dear, your mother was worried you wouldn't come." "Hi Dad." I resisted the urge to tell him about the merger documents sitting in my briefcase. "How's retirement treating you?" He grimaced. "I'd still be running Division 3 if your uncle hadn't insisted on mandatory retirement at 65. But at least Michael will keep it in the family." I thought about the restructuring plans I'd already drawn up, plans that would modernize the outdated divisions my father had clung to for so long. "And you?" He glanced at my simple dress with barely concealed disappointment. "Still doing that consulting work? We always hoped you'd follow the family tradition." I remember, Dad. 3 years ago, when I'd turned down a vice president position to start my own firm, he'd called it the biggest mistake of my life. "But I'm doing fine on my own." "Fine isn't the same as successful," he said quietly. "Look at your cousin. About to become the youngest CEO in company history." I bit back a laugh. Michael wouldn't even be the youngest CEO this week. My Aunt Claire swooped in, diamonds glittering at her throat. "Hannah, darling, we missed you at the country club benefit last week. Though I suppose on a consultant's salary, those ticket prices might be a bit steep." "I was in London," I said truthfully, omitting that I'd been finalizing the merger with our biggest competitors. "Business meetings." "Oh, with that little firm of yours." She patted my arm condescendingly. "Well, I'm sure things will pick up eventually." Before I could respond, Uncle David called everyone to attention. He stood at the center of the room, commanding as ever in his bespoke suit, crystal tumbler in hand. "Family," he boomed, "as you know, tomorrow marks a new chapter for Anderson and Brooks. After 40 years with the company, 30 as CEO, I'm ready to announce my successor." The room hushed. Michael straightened his tie, practiced smile in place. "But first," Uncle David continued, "I want to address some rumors you might have heard. Yes, we are merging with Bennett Global. The board approved it this morning." Murmurs rippled through the room. My cousin Elizabeth, always the gossip, spoke up. "But Uncle David, what about family control? Our legacy?" "The merger was necessary," he admitted, the words clearly paining him. "Market changes, digital transformation, we needed to adapt. But don't worry. Michael's position is secure." I sipped my champagne, remembering the board meeting where I'd laid out exactly how outdated and vulnerable the company had become under Harrison leadership. "So tomorrow morning," Uncle David raised his glass, "I'll be announcing Michael Harrison as the new CEO of Anderson and Brooks Domestic Operations." The room erupted in applause. Michael beamed, accepting congratulations with practiced humility. My father squeezed my shoulder. "It could have been you," he whispered. "If you just stayed with the company." I watched my family celebrate, all of them so certain of their position, so secure in their assumptions about success and failure. None of them had bothered to research Bennett Global beyond the surface. None of them had questioned why such a powerful firm would merge with their struggling company. "A toast," Michael called out. "To the future of Anderson and Brooks." "Still the same old Michael," my cousin Sophia whispered beside me. "Already planning to redecorate the CEO's office." I smiled, thinking of the modernist furniture I'd already ordered for that same office. "He might want to wait on that." "Hannah," she looked at me curiously, "you seem different tonight. Like you know something." "Maybe I do." I checked my watch. 14 hours until the morning announcement. But for now, let's let them enjoy the celebration. Uncle David cornered me by the buffet, his third scotch making him expansive. You know, Hannah, there might still be a place for you at the company. Under Michael's leadership, of course. Something entry-level to learn the business properly. Thank you, Uncle David, I said politely. But I think I'm where I need to be. He shook his head. Always so stubborn. Just like your mother. The Harrison women never know what's good for them. I thought about my mother, who'd supported my decision to leave 3 years ago. Who'd understood why I needed to prove myself outside the family shadow. Who'd given me her maiden name to use while I built my own empire. Sometimes, I said quietly, we know exactly what's good for us. The evening wore on, a parade of family achievements and thinly veiled digs at my career choices. My cousin Patricia's husband had made partner at his law firm. Elizabeth's daughter had gotten into Harvard Business School. Everyone was succeeding in exactly the way the Harrison family defined success. Poor Hannah, I overheard my Aunt Margaret whisper. Still hasn't found her way. Such a shame, she had such potential. My uncle's response was clear. She could have had it all. The family name, the connections, the future. Instead, she's what? A freelance consultant. I checked my phone one last time before leaving. Tomorrow's press release was ready. Bennett Global completes merger with Anderson and Brooks. Bennett to assume CEO role. Leaving so soon? Michael called out as I gathered my coat. Don't forget my offer. Entry-level position starting next month. Though you'll have to improve your wardrobe. I paused at the door, unable to resist. Actually, Michael, I have an early meeting tomorrow. Very important client. Oh. He smirked. Finally landed a big fish in your little consulting pond? Something like that. I smiled. See you at the office. As my Uber pulled away, I watched my family through the mansion's windows, still celebrating, still certain of their place in the world, still unaware that everything would change in the morning. My phone buzzed with a text from the board chairman. Press release approved. See you at 8:30 a.m. CO Bennett. I smiled, thinking of Michael's face when he realized who really ran the company. Sometimes success isn't about following the family path. Sometimes it's about creating your own. The next morning, I arrived at Anderson and Brooks headquarters at exactly 8 a.m. The security guard did a double take when I showed him my new ID badge. No longer a visitor's pass, but one that read CO office. There must be some mistake, he stammered. No mistake, I smiled. Please inform building services that my office furniture will be arriving at 10. The executive floor was already buzzing with anticipation. Michael's nameplate had been mounted beside the CEO's office door overnight. Inside, I could hear him directing the maintenance staff about where to hang his paintings. The Harrison family portrait goes there, he was saying. And make sure my new business cards are on the desk before the press conference. I checked my watch. 20 minutes until the board meeting. Just enough time. Michael, I called out sweetly. Shouldn't you be in your current office? The announcement isn't for another hour. He turned, his smile condescending as ever. Hannah, come to watch the big moment. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about that entry-level position. Actually, I set my briefcase down on what would soon be my desk. I'm here early for the board meeting. You should probably head down to the domestic operations floor. That's where your new office will be. His smile faltered slightly. What are you talking about? This is my office. Dad announced it last night. He announced you'd be head of domestic operations, I corrected him. Not CEO. That position goes to the leader of Bennett Global, the company that just acquired controlling interest in Anderson and Brooks. The maintenance staff quietly slipped out, sensing the tension. Bennett Global? Michael's face reddened. That's just a merger of equals. Dad said dash. Your father said what he knew at the time, I interrupted smoothly. The board, however, made other arrangements. Realization began to dawn in his eyes. You know something about this. Follow me, I said, walking toward the boardroom. It's time for your cousin Hannah to teach you a little lesson about assumptions. The boardroom was filling up when we arrived. Board members, senior executives, and my Uncle David all turned to stare as I walked in. Not to my usual observer seat in the back, but to the CEO's chair at the head of the table. Hannah. Uncle David stood up. What are you doing? That seat is for Dash, the CEO of Bennett Global. I finished for him. Also known as H. Bennett. Also known as Hannah Bennett Harrison. The silence was absolute. Michael gripped the back of his chair, knuckles white. My uncle's face went from red to pale in seconds. That's impossible, he whispered. You're just a consultant. Actually, Board Chairman Edwards spoke up. Ms. Bennett, or Ms. Harrison if you prefer, has been orchestrating this merger for the past year. Her firm's acquisition of controlling shares, the digital transformation strategy, the international expansion plan, it's all been quite brilliant. I opened my laptop, displaying the morning's press release on the screen. Shall we begin? We have a lot to cover before the public announcement at 10. You can't do this, Michael burst out. Dad promised me Dash. Your father promised something he couldn't deliver. I cut him off. The board votes on CEO succession, Michael. And they voted for the person who could actually lead this company into the future, not just inherit it because of their last name. Uncle David sank into his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. All this time, your consulting firm was a private equity company that now owns 52% of Anderson and Brooks. I finished. Those little projects you all mocked? Billion-dollar acquisitions and corporate restructuring. While you were focused on country club memberships and corner offices, I was building something bigger than your imagination could handle. The boardroom doors opened again as my executive team filed in, brilliant professionals I'd recruited from top firms, none of them chosen for their family connections. Michael, I said quietly, you'll find your new office on the 3rd floor. Domestic operations will need a complete overhaul. And you're now reporting directly to Sarah Chin, our new COO. Report to, but I'm a Harrison, he sputtered. And I'm a Bennett, I smiled. At least professionally. Now shall we discuss the future of the company? The real future, not the family fantasy you've all been living in. The next 2 hours were a blur of presentations, organizational charts, and strategic initiatives. I laid out my vision for Anderson and Brooks, modernization, digital transformation, international expansion. Everything the board had approved, everything my family had resisted. My uncle barely spoke, watching with a mix of shock and dawning respect as I commanded the room. Michael had been escorted to his new office, his dream of being CEO shattered by the cousin he'd dismissed for so long. After the board meeting, as the press gathered in the lobby for the official announcement, my father appeared in my new office doorway. Why didn't you tell us? He asked quietly. I looked up from the stack of merger documents. Would you have believed me? When have any of you ever believed I could succeed without the Harrison name? We were wrong, he admitted. So wrong. All these years. All these years I was building something while you were all protecting something. I finished. That's the difference, Dad. You can't lead a company into the future if you're too busy clinging to the past. My phone buzzed with messages from last night's dinner party. Aunt Margaret, darling, we had no idea. So proud of you. Cousin Elizabeth, coffee soon? I'd love to discuss opportunities. Uncle David, can we talk? Please. I deleted them all except one from my mother. You showed them, baby. You showed them all. The press conference went exactly as planned. Cameras flashed as I stepped up to the podium. No longer the family disappointment but the CEO who'd orchestrated the biggest merger in company history. Ms. Harrison, a reporter called out, how does it feel to take over your family's company? I smiled, thinking of all the family dinners where they'd mocked my career choices. Actually, I prefer Ms. Bennett professionally. And it feels exactly like I planned. 6 months later, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports. The company's stock had risen 40% since the merger. Our digital transformation was ahead of schedule. Even Michael was showing promise in his new role, now that he had to earn his position rather than inherit it. My assistant buzzed in. Ms. Bennett? Your family is here for the quarterly review. I smiled, straightening my CEO nameplate. Send them in. And Sarah? Make sure everyone has a copy of the new organizational chart. The one where Michael reports to 3 levels of management before reaching you? That's the one. As I watched my family file into the conference room, Uncle David no longer strutting, Michael in a regular suit instead of designer labels, my aunts without their society jewelry, I thought about success and failure, about family legacies and personal achievement. They had mocked my job, dismissed my ambitions, and underestimated my potential. Now they sat in my boardroom, waiting for my approval of their quarterly performance reviews. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right so spectacularly that they have no choice but to admit how wrong they were. And as I began the meeting, clicking to the first slide showing another record quarter under my leadership, I couldn't help but think that sometimes the best revenge isn't just becoming the boss. It's becoming the boss they never believed you could be.